Hello everyone, it's Shari here today, and in today's video I'm going to be making these two quick and cute valentines based on the periodic table of elements. So I've printed out the periodic table of elements. I'm sure we all remember this from science class in school. And in today's video I'm going to be using the little beakers from Science of Love as well as Claire's ABCs to make my blocks of the elements. So I'm going to be making my sentiments using the letters from the periodic table of elements. I'm going to be making two cards today, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my little beakers twice. And then there are some little steamy lines in that set, but I wanted to use bubbles. So I'm going to use the bubbles from Ocean Shelfie. There are a lot of sets that have bubbles, so you could just find a set that you have in your stash that has some bubbles. And then of course I'm adding the little smiley faces to each of those little flasks or beakers that have the liquid inside. I stamped all of these with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink so that I can color with my Copics. And I'm starting off with a very pale blue just for the tops of those beakers. And then each of them I'm going to color in a different color. And I've already figured out ahead of time what color I need for which block each of these is going to fall on. So this one is going to fall on an orange block. So I'm going to make the fluid inside orange so that everything on that square on my card will be orange in color because this is a rainbow kind of theme for each card. Then I'm moving on to a teal color. These two are going to go on the same card together. And I'm just starting with a darker teal at the bottom and then I will go in with a lighter teal at the top. So it's just very simple shading. And then the two on the bottom, they're going to go on my second card. So the sky needs to be yellow. Which I didn't have a whole lot of difference between my two yellows there, but I just added some more of that dark. And then this one's going to be green. So again, I'm starting with the dark one at the bottom. And then I'm going to go in with a lighter green at the top and blend those two together. Now for the bubbles, I already put some of that really pale blue on there. I'm going back with that really pale blue after I've colored the liquid inside of my beakers here and just kind of pulling it down so that they look like they're in glass. And then I'm going to go in with a darker blue and add a little bit of shadow to the bubbles and then blend that back out. And you can see I've only stamped 3 here. I actually stamped a 4th one and colored a 4th one so that every one of these little science beakers has some bubbles to come out of it. So I've laid out my squares here. I've cut these from colored cardstock. This is a 1-inch stitch square. I've got it from guava, fake tan, sunflower, cilantro, peacock, and sugar plum cardstock, and I've just laid them out in the order in which they're going to be on my card. This way I can figure out and not mess up and stamp the correct letters to spell out my sentiment. So this one's going to be a portrait card, and it's going to say, "I love you." And all of these I'm going to stamp in clear embossing ink and use white embossing powder. So I've just gone ahead and applied my anti-static powder to all the squares that I'm going to stamp on. I'm going to use Claire's ABCs to stamp out my elements. And I'm just going to start with the first one, which is I. And I'm going to be using my tweezers to hold this because these are small pieces. So I'm just going to use my tweezers to dip it into that embossing powder, tap off all that extra. And then I'm also going to use my tweezers to hold it while I heat this up with my heat tool so that I don't burn my fingers. And I'm just going to continue this process with all the squares that need letters added to it. So the yellow one here is LU. And because I'm using a sentiment set that has lower and uppercase letters, I can make these look like the elements in the periodic table by combining those uppercase and lowercase. Apologize for my head getting in the way a little bit there. This one is a V, and then this last one is going to be a U. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp the squares for the other card as well. This one is going to be landscape oriented, so it's going to have 3 squares across and 2 down. And it's going to say, "You are cute." So I've already stamped out the U. It was already on a block from the U on the other set. And then this one is AR to say R. And then on my last two squares down here, I'm going to stamp out a CU and a TE to spell out cute. And I really wish that I remembered my elements much better from school to tell you what all these actually stand for, but unfortunately I don't without looking them up. But I just think this is a super fun idea to use those elements to spell out words. So I've kind of put my squares in the order that they need to be, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my grid mat to line them up. And I'm leaving about 1/4 of an inch space between each square. So I'm just going to line all 6 of these up. This is for the first card that I stamped out. And once I have those in place, I'm going to take a piece of tape, and for this I'm using this micropore tape that's not super sticky, but it's nice and wide. And I'm going to lay it right down the center. And what I like about this is I can see through the tape, so I can see what I'm picking up. And I'm just going to pick up all 6 of those squares. And here's my card base that I'm going to be putting those on. And you can see how now I can just lay them all down as one piece. And now they're all lined up perfectly. I'm actually going to fold down the ends of this tape to make myself like a little handle that's not sticky. So it's a lot easier to pick up. And then I'm going to put a foam square on the back of each of these so that when they're on the card base, they are popped up from the card base. So now that I am removing all those liner pieces, I can just pick up that whole thing at once, using my grid mat to make sure things are straight. And you can see, I can see right through my tape, and I can line this up perfectly onto my card base right in the center. And then once I've got it in place, I can just tap all those squares and make sure that those foam squares are stuck down to the card base. And then this tape will easily pull away, not damaging my die cut squares. And then all my squares are in the perfect placement. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with the second one here. So I'm going to speed it up so you can see me do this process again. Again, using my grid mat to make sure they're all spaced properly and nice and straight. I'm using that same piece of tape for this one that I've already folded the ends down, made myself some little handles. I'm going to add those foam squares to the back of each of these squares. Pull all those liner papers off, and then line it up on my card base and stick it down. So super quick. So now to add my little beakers to my squares, I put a thin foam square on the back of these so they're popped up just a little bit off that square. And then I'll do the same with the bubbles. For this one, I'm going to use liquid glue just because I've got these crossing over 2 of these squares. I'm just going to put a dot on each side so that it sticks to that peacock square as well as the sunflower square. And then for this one, since it's off the top, I'm just adding a little foam dot. So for that landscape one, you can see why I colored one yellow and one green. Those are the squares those are going to fall on. And then I'm going to take those little bubbles again and just do the same thing that I did on the first one. So I'm adding a little foam square to that one at the top right, and then this one I'm just going to add a little dot of glue so that it sticks to the green square as well as the pink one. And then finally I'm using some stardust stickles to add a little bit of glitter to the bubbles just to make them shimmer. And then I forgot to add my numbers, which makes it look like it's part of the periodic table of elements. And I meant to do this, I just forgot. So these would be a lot easier to write on when they're not popped up on the squares. But I'm just going in with a white gel pen and adding those numbers based on the table. So you can see I've got that table of elements up off screen to the right up there, and I'm just looking at that to check to make sure my numbers match. I'm just writing them really small. But it just adds that extra touch so that you know where these letters came from and you get the connection to science and the periodic table of elements, which I just think is so much fun. And then here are my 2 finished cards. I'm sure you could think of some other sentiments to make out of these letters to make some more science periodic table inspired cards. But I just think these are so cute and so fun and really quick to create. Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.